In the previous video, I spoke about aliens and my understanding of what aliens are and why they interact with us. But there's also a huge range of entities that we don't consider aliens that are here. A catch-all term for that would be spirit persons. And this video is about interacting with spirit persons. Okay? So I am going to go through this, and then we're going to circle back and go through in more detail about how interacting with spirit persons relates to each of these particular bullet points. And then I'll share some personal examples to highlight how you can engage these principles and how to recognize this kind of stuff in your own life. Okay? So, the first thing to understand about spirit persons is that no one actually dies. So, anyone that has ever incarnated on this planet continues to have a spirit body. The soul projects itself through the spirit body. Okay? That means that your family and your friends and everybody else that you've ever heard of or ever not heard of still exists. They may not necessarily be on the earth, but they still exist. We have the ability to talk and communicate with these beings. Some of them want to talk to us, and some of them don't want to talk to us. Okay? Just because you're speaking with a spirit person doesn't mean that they are in a loving condition. Not at all. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they know more than you. Okay? So, ignorance and false beliefs are prevalent in every spirit person, and we'll talk about why in a second. Oftentimes, spirit people refuse responsibility for their own actions. And that actually makes perfect sense, right? Because from what I can tell, the vast majority of physical humans on the earth do not want to take responsibility for themselves either. So, like, if a physical person doesn't want to take responsibility for themselves, why would a spirit person want to take responsibility for themselves, right? Many of the spirit people that are here are in a dark condition, and we'll talk about how to recognize that in a second, okay? And finally, they manipulate us. They manipulate you in all sorts of ways, okay? They hook into us via our errors. And when I say errors, I mean our false beliefs about love from the Creator's perspective, okay? So in our soul, we are out of harmony with love from the Creator's perspective, and it is this condensation of error that creates these vortices in our spirit body that allow various spirit persons to hook into us and either give us energy, take energy away from us, or share in the various experiences that you are having in the physical world. So, let's go back and dissect all this stuff, right? How about the first one? No one dies. How about all of the beings that incarnated into a physical and spirit body, but their bodies were terminated before they had the ability to develop an intellect? Essentially, I'm talking about all of the aborted children that have ever existed, or all of the children that have died before, like, let's say 2 or 3, that don't remember being here. It's actually a lot of these beings that go on to become the aliens that I spoke about in the previous video. I forgot to mention that in the previous video, okay? But it kind of makes sense, right? Because, like, you know, if you incarnated here and you were aborted, okay, you probably don't have a lot of love for the planet and the people that are on it. nor would you have a great deal of love for like the various customs and traditions that occur here on that planet, right? Because, obviously, if you're an aborted child, then you're obviously born into a horrible, non-loving situation, right? So for those individuals, as they grow and develop in the spirit world and live their own lives, right, it is far easier for them to make up their own customs and ideas and self-group in their own ways, right? Like I talked about the concept of like spiritual countries. It's, that's kind of how that happens, Yeah, so pretty wild to think about that, huh? A lot of the aliens are actually formerly aborted children. How about the next one? Family, friends, and others. Well, in one sense, it's incredibly comforting to know that, like, hey, you know what? When your family members or friends die, they don't actually die. They're still around somewhere. Now, most of the spirit people that I'm going to talk about in this video are earthbound, which means they choose not to take up their place in the spirit world. They come back to the free will zone that is the earth, which obviously has a spiritual component to it, and they live out their various desires here, okay? The problem with this is that when most people live their physical lives, they're in a tremendous amount of error, and they don't realize how much error they're in. So, like, they think that they know more stuff about this place, but really, like, when your physical body dies, the only thing that changes is you no longer have a physical body. You do not become automatically enlightened. Why would you? If you want to know the truths of the universe, you have to explore it. You have to engage your passion and desire to find this stuff out, okay? Like, why do I know this stuff and not other stuff? Because this is what I am interested in, okay? Oftentimes, your family and friends will have attachments to you, and they will hook into you, especially family members. So, like, for a lot of these like legacy families that have been, like running the United States and the world for a very long time, okay, those beings that die a physical death do not want to accept responsibility for their dark condition, and they come back here to continue to enacting their will through various members of their family. And oftentimes, because of this, there are various, family shared emotional injuries that make it far easier for an ancestor to hook into a descendant, if you will. Okay? This causes all kinds of problems, and we'll talk about that in a second. We do have the ability to communicate with spirit people, and some of them want to talk to us. And, if you think about it, it makes sense, right? Like, not every spirit person walking around is evil. A lot of them just don't know what is going on, okay? So, like, imagine if you're a spirit person and you are still hanging out on the earth and you try to communicate with people and no one even knows you're there. So, when you acknowledge that a person or group of people may be there, I think that actually shows respect and compassion. And as a result, some of them will choose to talk to you, but some hide as well. Now, why do they hide? They hide because they don't want us physical humans to know this truth. Because think about it. If you are aware that you are being manipulated by multiple spirit people at any particular time, you're probably going to want to take steps to heal yourself. And as you heal yourself, you heal up all these vortices of error, okay? And then they can't hook into you anymore. So like, what if they enjoy hooking into you and they enjoy your lifestyle? Let's say you like to drink alcohol. There's no alcohol in the spirit world, okay? That's a human creation. Heavily processed as well, by the way, and poison. But, a spirit person may want to hook into a person who drinks alcohol in order to enjoy that experience, okay? And as a kind of a reciprocation, the spirit person may share some of their energy with that human, so they actually feel good. And it makes sense, right? Like, what's another name for alcohol? Spirits? Spirits. Hidden in plain sight. The truth is hidden in plain sight. Just because a person is in a spirit body does not mean they know the truth about anything. In fact, because they refuse to take responsibility for themselves and grow in the spirit world, there's actually a good chance that they're in a quite dark condition. And how do I know this? Well, because what is manipulation? All this is actually someone stealing your free will. That's what manipulation is, okay? You may not know it's happening, but the Creator knows it's happening. So for each of these spirit persons that are manipulating you, it will continue to darken their own condition. And my understanding of how darkness works in the spirit world is like, you can go for a real long time enacting non-loving behavior, but eventually what happens is your soul shrinks and it looks like a shriveled up raisin, okay? And your spirit body becomes weak to the point where all of your movement is restricted and you can't do anything. And all you can do is feel your emotions. So one false belief that many spirit people have, because it's prevalent on the planet, is that when you go to your place in the so-called afterlife, that it's permanent. Is anything permanent? No. It's another false Christian teaching. Okay? So spirit people believe this. And when they go to their spot in the spirit world, they're very uncomfortable. Because let's say you're a murderer. You're going to be put in a spot with other murderers. That's where you're going to be. Until you recognize the truth of your own situation and start to feel out your own suppressed emotions. And grow in love and develop a relationship with the Creator. Because again, that's what this is all about. Anytime you attract a spirit person, it is a law of attraction event. And in that sense, it is a blessing. Because if you are able to recognize the emotional state or particular reason how a spirit person hooks into you, that gives you your own roadmap to do your own work. So, if someone is hooking into you because they like to share when you drink alcohol, if you heal the various emotional injuries that create the cravings and desires for alcohol, then that person won't be able to hook into you anymore. So I'd like to share a personal story regarding all of this, okay? I have a friend who was molested and raped by her father when she was a small child. Okay? And she has yet to work through the totality of all of those emotions. Okay? She, as an adult, attracts a spirit who attacks her regularly. And there's a process here called mediumship, where a person has the ability to talk to a spirit when they temporarily overcloak a person. So it's like my friend steps away from her body and allows this spirit to temporarily speak through her, and then I can have a conversation with the spirit. Okay? Well, what I found out in the very brief amount of time that we spoke, because he quickly ended our conversation, is that he himself was molested when he was a kid by a priest in the Catholic Church. And he told me that he has no self-worth. So he gains what he thinks is self-worth by inflicting pain on my friend. So like, I'm sitting across from her having a conversation, and she starts writhing around in pain because she's got, pain shoots up her back. She gets these like sharp pangs of energy. And that is the spirit person attacking her. Okay? But she will not get rid of that entity until she deals with the same underlying emotions that he has, right? So it's self-worth. So if she's able to deal with her issues related to her self-worth, then that particular spirit will no longer be able to bother her. He might still be able to hang around, but he won't affect her life at all. I know this is kind of a wild concept to consider, this mediumship, but it's real. It's real. But your ability to do this and to sense all this has to do, again, with your own sensitivity and your emotional state, right? As we start healing our emotional injuries, we actually become more sensitive. We are able to perceive subtler forms of energy. And I have a fun story about that, but for another video. Another story of mine is that my Earth Mother died of radiation poisoning from attempting to treat her leukemia when I was 11. Okay? So her physical body no longer exists. Okay? But she's still around. Now, what gave her the cancer in the first place? That's what most people say. I don't know, right? But the truth is, it's something in her. Because it was her dis-ease. It's a manifestation of an injury from her soul. So a doctor who's prescribing you chemotherapy is not healing your soul. A doctor who's prescribing you radiation is not healing your soul. In fact, both of those things, chemotherapy and radiation, are poison. Now, why trust that? Well, that's an emotional injury in itself, right? Because you're ceding your control, your autonomy, and your sovereignty to other humans' authority. You're wanting someone to care for you. When she got to the spirit world, do you think her cancer went away? Nope. Still there. Still there. Because refuses to take responsibility. So, one of my emotional injuries was the desire and craving for feminine approval. And honestly, that's a pretty common one, especially in most men, Men are conditioned to please their mother. right? Okay. So if I've got one of these vortices going, then from her perspective, she's like, well, rather than go to hell, I'll just continue to guide my son. So she thinks she's helping me. Well, one of her ways of helping me was actually turning me away from God. Because she renounced God on her deathbed because she blamed God for her death. Do you see the loop of error here? So I'm going around from essentially age 13 on not believing in God. Now, I need to take responsibility for that because I've got free will too, right? So like I allowed myself to be manipulated even though I'm not conscious of it at the time. I'm still playing a role in it, right? Remember, law of attraction, okay? My soul, if I'm involved in it, I'm playing a role. Is it my fault that my mother overcloaked me and fed me a bunch of lies? No, it's not my fault. It's her fault. She's the perpetrator. However, I played a role in attracting the event, okay? If you notice yourself twitching or doing stuff or whatever, okay, that is actually a spirit person attempting to enter you or attempting to hook into you. Okay? So, like, when I'm up here talking about this stuff, okay, I can feel stuff going on all over the place because it's the spirit people do not want this information to get out. Because why would they? If the physical people knew the truth and took steps to heal themselves, then where would that leave the spirit person who's hooking into you? They would have to go back to the spirit world and be in hell and do their own work. So that's why I'm encouraging you to do the work in the physical plane. Because, you know, really, I know this is a tough place, but honestly, like, there are so many triggering events that if you allow yourself to not get wrapped up in it and identify with it, and instead own it and feel it out, you're going to have a much, 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 much easier spiritual progression, okay? That being said, I encourage you to attempt to communicate with the spirit people around you. See why they're there. See what they're doing. See what they like about you. Sometimes they like you. Sometimes they really do want to give you the best advice that they themselves know at the time. But how good could their advice be if they're in a dark condition? Good luck, friends. Love and peace.